Hey guys, we are back for another week. I'm here with Landon once again, as per usual. Say hi, Landon.
Hi, guys. It's
Hey.
Landon, reoccurring as the role of the omniscient voice in the background.
All right, and today we got a lot of really fun stuff for you guys. We're going to talk about our experiences in the education system and also about being lifelong learners. And of course, we're going to relate it all back to role play and writing advice and stuff like that. So while Landon is kind of going to do her little introduction and get you guys going, I'm going to get the game started. And I wanted to say thank you also to all of our new followers. I see we had several new followers come on while in between episodes. So welcome. Hey, happy to have you guys here.
Thanks for listening to us, Gab.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Well, yeah. So today we're going to be discussing education, but I think we also wanted just to do a quick disclaimer that we are both American, and
Yes.
we both had a United States of America experience and focus as far as when it came to education. And we know that different places around the world have different education focuses and styles. And so I think that's important to discuss and acknowledge when we're going to be discussing this. But if you are listening and have any insight for things outside of the American system, we would love to hear them. And even if you do have insight for stuff inside the American system, we'd love to hear that too. But especially opinions and experiences that happened outside of the USA. We would love to hear about your guys' take on education and what that experience was for you. So be sure
Yes.
to do it down in the chat, or you can contact me on our Discord server if you want to come in on live. We can always do that too.
Hey Naomi, how's it going? Happy to have you here. And yeah, this is going to be very American centric, aside from if anybody decides to come on and talk to us or what you guys share in the chat, we'll of course, shout that out. But yeah, we're both American. Different parts of the US, but American nonetheless.
Yes. All right, so let's start with our favorite things. Karen, do you have a favorite thing this week?
I do. Oh my gosh. Okay. Landon, I have a new ship.
Oh, tell me.
Okay, so I've shared this here and there. I don't know if you've caught it, but or noticed or whatever, but I I started watching She-Ra, the remake, right? The Princesses of Power remake that they
Yep.
did because the show was finally over, and the fandom for that show was just crazy, right? Like people were just crazy. So I didn't want to start watching it while the fandom was in its like heyday because I just didn't want to get involved with all that. But then once it was over, I was like, okay, I'm gonna binge this all because this looks up my alley. And oh my gosh, it's so good. It's like so good. I can see why it got popular, and I highly recommend the show to anybody. But
Okay.
my new ship from it is Entrapdac, which is wonderful. Ties back into last week. It's a villain ship, right?
Oh, yep, the best.
Yes. So it involves Entrapta, which is a basically she's like the science character, right? She's like the science character, and and she ends up getting captured by the evil horde. That's the main villains in the show, and she starts creating technology and basically using her science for them. But she's like in it for the science, so she's like, it's fine, whatever. Like they gave me a job, it's cool. And she ends up forming this kind of like very interesting dynamic with kind of who's the main ish villain of the show, Hordak. So that's the ship is a captor and captive
We
ship, and
love a
it's
good Stockholm syndrome.
oh my gosh, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's like I don't want to describe too much because I want you to experience it because I think you would be very interested in this.
Ooh.
And I this isn't exactly a spoiler because you'll figure this out pretty easily when you watch the show just because of the nature of it, but it becomes semi-canon.
Oh, the best
It's so
kind.
good. It's
I
so
love when
good.
the far-fetched ships become canon because you're like, oh, the writers actually understand what people want.
Oh my gosh, they so do in this show. They so do. So yeah, that is my recommendation. Go watch She-Ra on Netflix. It's excellent,
I love
and
that.
Stan and Trapdac for life is wonderful.
We love a good new ship.
Yes, so that's
All
my
right.
favorite thing this week in Trapdac. Send me in Trapdac art, in Trapdac fics. I'm here for it.
Yeah, do it. Okay. So,
What's
well,
your
my
favorite thing? Yeah.
okay. So I'm gonna break the rules a little bit,
Okay.
and that's because I'm gonna talk about two
That's okay.
because I
Rules are meant
couldn't
to be
choose
broken.
one. The reason being that I had one really picked out, and then Taylor Swift decided to drop a surprise album this week.
Oh man, how much I
Um,
knew folklore was going to be one of your favorite things. It would not be on brand if it was not.
when I was doing the outline, it had not dropped yet. And
Oh
so
my
when I
god.
picked my favorite thing, I was like, oh, who knew that Taylor would, of course, drop something and then change my life forever? And then she did. So Folklore by Taylor Swift, everyone needs to go listen to it and just be amazed at the wonderful queer album that it's turning out to be.
Oh, is it really? I feel
A
like
little bit.
I can't decide, based on the You Need to Calm Down, which I love the song, but I have some issues with the music video. If Taylor Swift is more pandering, or if it really is like actually kind of queer content. I struggle. I struggle to know. I'm not sure if I want to know at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's just kind of like fun to enjoy. I have not listened to the new album yet, which means I need you to tell me what's your favorite song on there, so I know what to go listen to first.
Well, Naomi just said it in the chat. It's Illicit Affair,
Hey,
which is
Lunar.
such a hi Lunar. Illicit Affair, which is an amazing song. But frankly, any of them are great. It is the album that I have needed since she came out with her Red album in like
Oh,
2012.
that's high praise from you. You love Red.
Yeah. Um, so I was like, oh, this is the album I needed, and then she just kept putting out pop albums, and so I'm finally I'm finally glad for like an indie folklore album, a
Love it.
folk album. But
Lunar, funny enough, is a huge Swiftie too. I learned that last night when I was in her stream.
oh
So
my
hey,
gosh,
Lunar, we're talking about Taylor Swift.
yeah. What is your favorite song, Lunar?
Yes.
I have to say, Illicit Affairs, Cardigan, and Elixir is amazing. Those are my top three.
Oh, okay. So that's what I need to go. That's what I need to do at some point today is go listen to those three. I'll
Yeah,
put
you
that on
can
my to-do list.
please do. Okay, and then while Lunar is answering the question about what is her favorite song, I will talk about the favorite thing that was originally my favorite thing for this week.
Before Taylor Swift stole that thunder.
Yes, but apparently this week is just supposed to like enlighten and just like make my inner high schooler so happy, which is great. Because my favorite thing this week was is actually Twilight. And I know what you're
Oh.
thinking. You're like,
Oh.
Landon, it's
Oh.
not 2008.
It's not.
We are not 16. What the fuck do you mean Twilight is your favorite thing this week? And I will tell you that my friend and I were having a tough day. And so we decided that we wanted to just like zone out and watch a movie. And we thought, it would be really, really fun to just riff Twilight, to just
Ooh,
make fun of it.
fun.
And so her roommates had gotten into it. Like they were like, "Oh yeah, that sounds great." And one of her other roommates were like, "Well, I've actually never seen it." I was like, "Okay,
How
that's
did
going to be
she miss
amazing."
it?
He
Oh, he. How did? Oh, well, that's how. Never mind. I
that's
understand
how.
now.
But like my brain did not put that together, right? Cuz I was like, "Oh, okay. 30-year-old man didn't see Twilight. I understand that. But when he says didn't see, he means that he missed it altogether. And
Hmm.
I didn't realize this because I thought it was just that he never watched it. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize this until there is a moment in the movie where Edward is showing off all the reasons why he is too dangerous to be around Bella. And he's like throwing trees and going super fast. And then he's like, "You should see me in the sunlight."
Oh.
And we, as people who grew up in that age and era, know exactly what's going to happen when Edward Cullen steps into the sunlight, right? This man did not know and was not prepared at all. So when he steps in and starts sparkling, my friend Jamie goes, "What the hell is he doing?" And it was in that moment that I realized he knew absolutely nothing about Twilight, which just made it wonderful because
Oh
it is the
no.
worst thing in the world to watch if you're expecting vampires and you're getting a glittering boy in the sun.
Oh my God, this poor man. My heart. Jamie, you can show him this clip. Jamie, my heart goes out to you. I was ever so slightly, I was ever so slightly too old for Twilight. So I was in the prime of like making fun of Twilight and disliking Twilight. And I'm so sorry that you got to miss all of that because it was a roller coaster, right? It was a roller coaster from like,
It
I hate
was.
Twilight, all the way to, well, maybe some parts of it are okay, all the way to the third book where it actually gets kind of adult and super weird and kinky. And I was like, I don't know about
Yeah.
this. Maybe there's good parts. And then like at this point, the fandom has gone full circle and it's kind of like, maybe we were wrong to hate on Twilight so hard. It's just like a
Oh,
weird it's just like a weird fantasy book. It's whatever. And just
it's
that whole
terrible.
journey. That whole journey has been magical and I'm so sorry, Jamie, that you missed it.
The whole thing has been terrible because the movies are just trash. The
Oh yeah.
books, I will say that the books actually have some decency in them as far as storytelling goes, but
Although
the
let's be
movies
fair,
are just,
the books are mostly trash too. But they're like
I
they're
mean, yeah,
like
they
our
are.
they're kind of like, our trash. Our like they're
Yes.
the kind of trash that women enjoy. So, it's kind of like forgivable. But the movies try to
That
like redeem them in these weird ways. Anyway, yeah, so that's my opinion on the Twilight movies. They're like all the bad parts of the book.
that is very true. So no, so upon hearing that the reaction he had to Edward Cullen Sparkling, I knew what I must do, and that was to put my very dear friend Jamie through the entire series of Twilight. So we have watched up to Eclipse. We are going to watch Breaking Dawn, both part 1 and part 2 tonight. He still has no idea that there's like a demon baby coming on the way.
Oh no.
He has reacted perfectly to everything. And it's been fantastic.
Oh
Because
my
I don't think I
gosh.
really appreciated people finding out about what happened in the series when I was 16, but I'm getting to live this. And it's just wonderful because I feel like I'm torturing him, but also getting to be happy and laugh about it.
Lunar speaking my language, keep your vampires and give me the wolves. The wolf pack
No.
dynamics are the best part of Twilight. Come,
Okay.
don't at me. Don't at me. They are.
So
They
the
are.
dynamics. Okay, so here I'll keep this. The lore for the wolves in Twilight is acceptable. I
Stellar, and
like
they
the
don't explore it,
dynamics.
and they should.
I enjoy the dynamics. All of the characters are trash. That is my mic drop. I'm sticking with it.
Okay, I really can't disagree with you there. If she had designed better wolf characters, then maybe she would have felt compelled to actually explore the really cool lore that she made. Anyways,
Yeah.
the werewolf lore is the best part of Twilight. Like that's my Twilight take, right?
I
As
I
a
agree with
werewolf
you.
stan.
Yes, I agree with you. But I think what the biggest problem is that she tries to sell something that is extremely problematic as something that's not problematic.
Oh yeah, it's super
Being like
problematic.
this
Super
falling in love at
problematic.
first sight
Mm-mm.
idea, and like that
Awful.
I can just lose my temper and then kill you. But being like, no, it's true love, which I
Yeah,
like
no.
as a writer love, but also it's not a good, healthy dynamic.
No, and the only character that ever has anything to say about the actual reality of the dynamics in the book is Bella's dad, who gets totally sidelined,
Oh
right?
my
So
god.
that's like kind of a failing. There should have been more than one character like that, and they shouldn't have been. He shouldn't have been sidelined. But it is what
So
it is.
we have decided as a collective, this group that's watching Twilight together, that Charlie Swan should have been an alcoholic. It would have been so much like added depth to his character instead of just being the awkward father who doesn't know anything. And I was
Meow.
like, that's the best part about Twilight. Sorry, my cat's meowing in the background if you can hear him.
Hey,
Um,
Sherlock.
just noisy. He's like, Mama, you're talking to someone.
You should be
Yeah,
talking
no.
to him.
I talk to you all the time, child. Anyway. So that was my original favorite thing was the Twilight series. Not because they're great, but because the reactions by other people have been fantastic.
Love it. So we let to backtrack for just a second. It looks like Lunar had said her favorite songs were "Last American Dynasty" and "Betty." Do you have any
Yeah,
hot takes on those songs? How do you feel about
that's
those ones?
so the three I mentioned earlier were my top three. Last American Dynasty is number 4, and Betty is
Oh,
number 5. So
oh
Lunar,
wow,
you got great taste.
wonderful! I love it. I love it.
Oh,
Yeah, so I'll
sorry,
have.
the cat is knocking things down now.
That's what they
Um,
do.
Betty is the super queer song.
Mm.
It's not. So here's the thing. Not to like deep dive and make this entire stream about Taylor Swift,
Yeah, I'm
but
sorry. I'll tune out. I mean, I don't know what it means when you click off of your own stream, but
but very quickly, the song is written by Taylor, obviously, and is sung by Taylor. However, it's supposedly about the perspective of a man talking about his like first love, but it's totally not. It's totally queer. Anyway,
Oh,
that's all I have to say about that.
okay.
Um,
Well, I
so
will I will have to actually listen to this and give my take.
do
I
it.
hope I like it, and that she doesn't release music videos that make me ruin the parts that I like. That's what I really have to say about
That's
that when it
fair.
comes to Taylor and queer content.
Yeah, well, I understand the so you gotta calm down. The song was, I think, it was a little pandering,
It
like
was
you
super
said.
pandering. It was super
But
pandering. And then on
you know
top of
what?
that,
I
she
also
tries to pretend the haters are all just poor Southern people. And it's like, no,
yes.
that's not what's hurting gay people. What's hurting gay people
Well,
is the systems and structures, not your poor neighbor that's a bigot, you know?
yes, but I also sit there and I go, I will accept any allyship I can, especially because it is so still to this day incredibly rare within Hollywood and or celebrities
I
to
mean, that's
come out
fair.
with content, to not support, like it's not rare for celebrities to support, but to come out with content and actual support. People are either identify as queer themselves or they don't create content. So I am very grateful for Taylor Swift in that way. However, I agree that her take on what homophobia looks like these days
Like, that's just
was
not true. It's
very
just not true.
was yeah, was not true.
Yeah. So
So
yeah, that's the issue that I had with it. But it was kind of her first time trying to do that. So A for effort.
yeah,
That sort of thing.
yeah. I mean, I'll take it. And then I like that songs have undertones rather than coming out. I think the subtlety is what makes it important because it shouldn't have to allyship shouldn't have to be a like statement of being like, oh, if you don't like gay people, then you're stupid. It should just be like, yeah, gay people exist.
Yeah, they're here, and
Fuck it
and
up.
it's a thing, and you just need to figure out what that means for you.
Yeah, exactly. So that's our favorite things. Um, if you're watching the chat right now or you're watching the Twitch, be sure to subscribe to the Twitch. I think we forgot to say that
Yeah,
earlier.
follow. Give us a
Um,
follow. Sorry,
yeah,
we're like really new to Twitch and super boomers, so like I know it's follow, but I keep doing the same thing. I keep doing the same thing and saying subscribe. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow the Twitch.
follow the Twitch, subscribe to YouTube, and also follow our Instagram.
Yes.
Both Karen's and our Enter Stage Window, which is the name of this wonderful stream, since we were terrible at introducing that as well.
Oh yeah, we actually have a name now. I keep forgetting, but we have a name now. We're called Interstage Window.
Yep.
That's our official stream name.
So, do we want to dive right in?
Yeah, I think let's dive right in. We've got a really meaty topic, so let's dive right in. What are we starting with first?
So, for those of you who were not here to join us because our viewership went up since we started, we are talking about education right now. And I figured a good place to start would be our stories through education because both of us have both of us, first of all, are teachers in some ways. I'm going to be a teacher for elementary middle school, and you are a teacher of adults, but
Hmm.
it's more of like teaching as a job rather than like being in a school system.
Yes, so I'm not part of the school system. I'm what's called a corporate trainer, but if you've not worked in the corporate world before, sometimes that's confusing. So what I'll say a lot of times is like I'm a teacher, but it's for adults. So essentially what I do is, when you get a new job at a new company, you'll have like either training videos you have to watch, or you'll be sent to a classroom with a trainer to learn how to do the job, or like someone will come sit with you at your desk and show you the things you're supposed to do. That's my job. I build those things, and I come to your desk and sit with you, or those sorts of things when you start a new job. So that's what I do. It's really not that different than teaching, but it's for adults, and the focus is really on like you were just hired and you need to learn this specific set of tasks or skills. So
Makes
that's what I do.
And then we also both consider ourselves lifelong learners and
Yes.
people who are really aware and want to continue our education, whether it's in uh, a what's we call it, like
Formal
a
or informal.
professional, normal way, or yeah, formal or informal.
Yeah.
Those are the words.
Yep.
I speak English. I promise. So yeah, we kind of just wanted to discuss that and have that topic and our experiences going through that and how we got to where we are about the feelings of education as well as wanting to be in ways teachers, as well as wanting to continue to learn throughout our life, and how we can apply that to our RP styles and writing in general.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Karen, why don't you tell me about your experience within the educational system here in the United States?
Okay, so I went to public school in a deep South state, so it's not unusual for it to be said that those educations aren't the best and da 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 things like that. But really, my education wasn't too bad. My parents actually made an overtly political decision to send me to public school because they thought it was very important that I understand how to get along with people different than us, people that are different, socioeconomic classes, people that are different races, people with just different experiences than what I was experiencing in my relatively middle class neighborhood. So it was a very political decision. I'm glad they did it because I saw what happened to the kids that came out of private schools in my area. Not so good. So, very glad that they did that. So, my education was actually fine all the way up until high school. So, what happened in high school is that the No Child Left Behind policy was enacted. And I was the very first class at my high school that was forced to go through the standardized testing that came with the No Child Left Behind policy. So basically, what that meant is to graduate, I had to pass a class and a specific test that basically said, like, Karen knows enough to graduate high school. So you were allowed to take this test all the way from 10th grade on. So the moment I was allowed to take it, I took it and I passed it because it wasn't that hard, right? It was testing for bare minimum, right?
Yeah.
So that was the No Child Left Behind policy, and I passed it in 10th grade. And after that, what I experienced was being taught that test over and over and over and over and
Yeah.
over because there were kids that hadn't passed it, and we wanted our school to have everyone pass it. So, what the teachers would do is constantly have to be reteaching and reteaching the information that was on this test to try to help kids pass it. And so, for those of us that already had passed it, we were just subject to this. We were subject to this over and over and over. And then, so I basically tolerated that during the end of the 10th grade and through 11th grade. And then during the summer of, oh my gosh, thank you so much for the host, Lunar. Really, really appreciate that. Um, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. Okay. So during the summer of my 11th grade year, I started applying to colleges. I did early acceptance, early admission, and I got into the college I wanted to go to. And my parents agreed, yes, we will pay for this particular college. It's all good. So in my mind, like, I was done. I was technically, it was impossible for them to hold me back from graduating because I'd passed their stupid test. I had a college I was accepted to that they couldn't undo it now because my parents started paying them, right? So, like, that was it. That was it. I was done. And so, because I could not muster the ability to give a shit, in my senior year, I just totally checked out. I started skipping classes that I thought weren't important. I started, only doing the things that I thought were fun. I started doing everything I could to participate in school as little as possible because there was no reason for me to be there to sit in class and learn about a test that I passed 2 freaking years ago, right? So that was a lot of my experience with high school, and it actually really screwed me up. It really screwed me up because I kind of forgot, like, how to go to class and be present and show up and take tests and stuff because I just
Oh
kind of
no.
didn't do it for a year. So my
Yeah.
my freshman year of college was actually kind of difficult. Like, it was freshman year, right? You don't do anything. I went to a liberal arts college, so we didn't do anything like that hardcore first semester
Mm.
of the freshman year. It was all very easy stuff. So, like, it wasn't a big deal, like, as far as affecting my grades go, but I was constantly stressed out because I was woefully underprepared constantly for every quiz, for every test, for everything because I was doing the same thing. I was like doing the classes I thought were fun. and just like checking out of the stuff that I didn't care about. And I had to kind of like relearn how to be a student, which was absolutely freaking torturous. So, what I'm trying to say is, I blame No Child Left Behind for me for essentially like a year and a half of my life forgetting how to learn things. And that was my experience with the education system. Now, eventually, of course, I was good with it. Like I got over it, and I started, paying attention and doing what I was supposed to do to actually learn stuff in class. And I
Yep.
was fine. And I was fine. Like, it was just really the first semester that I was really like screwed up for. So I got out of it and it was fine. But, it was torturous. It was really, really torturous my first semester of college, and academically torturous. So yeah, that's my experience. Not so good. Not so good,
So
really.
I have a couple questions because I was a little
Okay.
younger. So when I do not remember a time before No Child Left Behind, mostly
Mm-hmm.
because I was in private school before it enacted, and then when I went to public school, it was already a part of the system.
Yep.
So the standardized testings that you were taking, were they, when they first were implemented, were they already attached to funding, or did that happen a little bit later? Do you know?
No, they already were. They already were. So there was a
Okay.
lot of like, if we don't pass everyone, we're going to lose our funding.
So
There was a
it wasn't,
point. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so it wasn't necessarily that they wanted to pass everyone, it's that they were just basically like, nope, we need everyone to pass because
Yeah, there was
we are
panic.
going to not have any money to pay our teachers.
Yeah, there was like legit panic. Like it's not like the teachers made this decision and thought standardized testing is great. We think this is a wonderful
Yeah.
system. Let's do it. No, like they were coerced the same way everybody else was. This was not like something like that where like everybody collectively thought this horrible thing was a good idea. Not the case. So yeah, that's a good question because I want that to be clear for anybody that's younger that doesn't remember going through this. No Child Left Behind, the testing was tied to funding. So there was pressure for all of us to pass the test. There was pressure for the smart kids, like, please don't leave us and go to private school. Please don't leave us and go to boarding school. Please graduate with us. And like, please tolerate having to basically do the same thing for 3 years in a row while we get these tests passed. Because it was their first year. They didn't know what the hell they were doing. I was literally class
Yeah.
number one that was required. So they did not know what the hell they were doing with us.
Yeah, that's so that's so frustrating.
It was super
That like
frustrating.
that the fact that, I mean, the first of all, for people who do not know what No Child Left Behind was, for those outside of the United States or who haven't heard it, it's basically a series of laws that were passed by President Bush Jr. Not, he's not actually a junior, but it was the
W.
second Bush.
W.
W. That basically said that in order for kids not to drop out, there would be a new system of how schools would receive funding from the government that would require yearly standardized tests from grades 2 through senior year in high school. So basically, for basically 10 years, you had to take these tests. And then depending on how the percentiles the school does is dependent on how much funding they get.
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is so stupid
Yeah.
because that also means that places that have less students or less rural or areas that have people with higher privilege versus people who have low privilege, inner city schools, urban schools are much less likely to get funding, even though they're the ones that need funding the most.
Yep. So in these areas, for example, where like a lot of the students, by the time they reach high school, they are also working to help support their families because they're living in impoverished areas where
Yep.
jobs are just not plentiful. They essentially get cut funding because you can't do super well in school when you're trying to work 20, 30 hours a week on top of going to class. You know.
Yep.
So
And
it's
then
awful.
yeah, it basically rewarded, the whole purpose of it was to reward schools that were doing well and penalize schools that were doing badly, but it didn't take into account that the schools that were doing badly, quote unquote, needed more help and more resources.
Yeah, they didn't take
um
into account why certain schools did better than others. Essentially, it
I mean,
didn't.
yeah,
It didn't. It
it
tried to pretend like that the what schools did better or worse had something to do with like the quality of teachers or the
yeah,
intelligence of the students, and that's just not the case.
no. So it was a terrible thing, and then it has stayed. Like, it has developed and changed. Obama tried to rewrite some of the rules, but in order to replace the laws, he needed to come up with his own, and those laws were not nearly, or standards were not nearly as, they weren't good either. We still have
No.
standardized testing. Funding is still built on testing. What it did, it changed that the fact that if a school is reporting poor grades, it gets 3 years of additional funding to raise those grades or raise those test scores so that you can hypothetically, if you're getting additional funding, you can solve the problems.
Mm-hmm.
But then if those test scores do not raise, then the entirety of the school gets both that additional funding taken away and then their original budget taken away as well.
Yeah. So schools, essentially right now, what schools are being told to do is, hey, you have 3 years to fix systemic problems that have nothing to do with
Yeah.
how you run your school. Is
Yeah.
essentially the state that we're in now, which isn't any better. It's only like slightly, like a half step better than what I went through, but it doesn't do anything to solve the underlying problems.
And then the other thing that No Child Left Behind did was make it basically impossible to fail or be left behind. So students all of a sudden that were struggling with certain classes or certain concepts, especially in elementary and middle school, were passed through whether they knew the content or not. They were
Yep.
never held back. Holding back a student required multiple steps, so that you had students who barely have any reading ability in high school because
Yep.
of these issues, because they were never properly taught. Because once you move on, you've been assumed that you've already been taught how to read, and if you weren't capable of doing that in third grade and were never taught how to continue doing that, or how to change those habits, or how to cope, you're just not going to be able to be at that literacy level at all.
Yep.
And that made it so that kids can fall through the cracks, even though this idea was supposed to help kids not fall through the cracks.
Yeah. So they pass on paper, but they don't really. They don't really
Yeah,
at all.
they don't really.
So before we get into too much else with that, because there's a lot of different ways that that conversation could kind of spiral, but
Yes.
I want to hear your history. So,
Oh
so
god.
Landon, explain your history with the education system.
All right. So I think it's very important to realize that there is a huge split for me. I was a very different person in high school than I am in college. So there are two very different takes. For the first thing with high school is, well, for my primary school, I was lucky enough to be in a private school from grades K through 8. My graduating class was 12 people.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a very small private school. I had the same people and basically the same teachers through the entire thing. And it was nice in a way that I was very lucky to get that one-on-one attention, that I was able to have a lot more freedom because there weren't those requirements on private schools. I never took a standardized testing. I was able to learn the curriculum without having to worry about what the government was thinking, which was very, very nice. And I'm very privileged for that fact. However, it still wasn't the best experience because, first of all, small groups and small as much as like one-on-one attention and small classroom sizes are good, it can get very, very cliquey and very, very hard to learn in an environment that can be hostile because it's so small. It's an interesting conundrum. But that was my own personal experience. But I went through, as far as learning, I learned the traditional route. So there was no, like nowadays in private schools, there's the idea of different kinds of learning, whether it's high focus on kinesthetic learning or community service projects or anything like that. That didn't exist when I was going through private school. It basically was just school, but smaller classes. So I was ahead of the curve when I entered my freshman year, and for freshman year, I went to 3 different high schools. Freshman year, I went to an all-girls Catholic school, which was a very interesting learning curve. And it was for the first time that I really felt like what school was, that I had multiple different teachers, multiple different classes, that I was able to choose what I kind of wanted to learn and how to say in it, which was very interesting. But then I was asked not to return, being that I'm not Catholic, and I made that very clear.
How dare you?
When I started questioning God in theology class, they were like, perhaps this isn't the school for you. Um, so So then after that, I went to Overland High School in Aurora, Colorado, which is which is one of the schools in the Cherry Creek district. And I know I'm giving so much information, but the reason for it is because the Cherry Creek district is incredibly segregated. Overland is a mostly Black and Hispanic school. 3% of the population was white, and going from an all-girls Catholic school to that was very interesting, and it was a huge take on different ways of learning, because all of a sudden I was learning things that I was expected to know, that had been expected to know in 6th grade. I was learning then as my sophomore in college, or sophomore in high school, and I was bored by it. It's very similar to you as far as like, I already know this. Why am I learning this? But because of the way that the funding had worked, this school was one of the poorest in the district because of their lack of test scores. And their lack of test scores had to do with the fact that there was a huge amount of poverty in the area, and that students weren't able to learn outside of school, which was heartbreaking to learn. But also, as someone who was very privileged, watching that was incredibly, it tore me up. And made me very confused as to why this was so different than my previous high school. Why were there no new books? Why didn't people have access to technology? Why was there an assumption that the students were stupid? How the teachers treated students differently was appalling. And then the different types of students there was incredibly shocking to the system. And I got overwhelmed and overloaded, and I just stopped caring about school. So I stopped doing everything, including homework.
That's so
And
sad.
yeah, I mean, I didn't want to do it. I had learned and I had read Romeo and Juliet for the 4th time. And there was a huge amount of like issues that I personally had with the system, but I also didn't want to do homework because I hate homework. Still to this day, as a college student, hate homework.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. I have a whole take on homework, but I don't know
we'll
if
get
I
there.
don't know if we'll get to that. But we'll see.
But so I did that for an entire year, and my grades slipped, of course, as they should. I was acing tests and and participating in class and being who I was as a student, but I wasn't turning in any homework, which means that every single class on my report card was a D.
Mhm.
Because that's how much weight homework was considered in that school.
So you basically were getting like not getting a participation grade. So they were like, well, she knows the material, but she's not participating, so we're going to punish her for that.
Well, the problem was I was participating. It's just that
Oh.
homework was considered 40% of the grades.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was, which is
That's a lot.
terrible. And looking back on it now, I was like, what about the kids that like were raising younger siblings and who had justifiable reasons to not do their homework and were failing because of those reasons? That's terrible that that's how the system was made.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there were
So
kids in that school in that exact situation. There's no way that there weren't.
yeah, no, 100%. And that was common. Like, that's the other thing too, is that homework was so high on all of the classes that most people were failing because of that. Because also, why give me busy work? That's how a lot of people viewed homework.
Mhm.
And there wasn't really a sports system in place in that school because of the poor funding. And so a lot of kids who normally would have had drive to keep up their grades in order to participate in after-curricular activities couldn't either afford those after-curricular activities, or they just didn't exist within that system.
Wow.
So there was no drive or motivation to keep up their grades for any other reason than to not.
Right, they had more important things to worry about.
Yeah, and being at home and all of that was more important.
Mhm.
So halfway through that year, my mom married my stepdad, and we moved. I continued to go to Overland for the rest of the semester, but then the next year, which would be my junior year, I went to a different school in the same system, in the same school district, which
Mm.
was incredibly different. The ratio of race flip-flopped. All of a sudden, 97% of the student body was white, and
Mhm.
3% were people of color. There was new technology available. There was new books available every year. There were activities and classes and sports and extracurricular activities that you were encouraged to do. It was an entirely, in the public school system, an entirely different school.
And if
And
that
it was,
isn't and if that isn't like the perfect case study that shows that
yeah,
really this all is just white supremacy, that's
it
all it
is a
does. It just all
hundred
goes back
percent
to white
racism.
supremacy.
Yep. And when I say that we moved a mile away from my old house, we crossed a line, an invisible line that told us what school we could go to. And that was it. We moved into a whiter neighborhood. And due to that, I was able to go to this school with everything that you could want. Um, and I had that opportunity when so many people didn't, because they were literally born on the wrong side of the line, quote
So
unquote.
crazy. That's so crazy.
And it's disgusting that that's
Yeah.
happening.
And that still happens. That's still basically
Oh,
how our school system works. For those
it
that are
is.
not, in the U.S. and don't know, that's incredibly common. And no matter where.
Segregation.
Yeah,
Segregation within our school system still exists.
yeah, and it's no matter where. That has nothing to do with like the deep South gets a lot of flack for being, racist and things like that. But the reality is it's everywhere. Stuff like that is everywhere. There's not a single state in the U.S. that does not have that type of experience.
And we're talking about, this is Colorado, which is supposedly one of the more liberal and and has the higher demographic of people of color, one
Hmm.
of those states. Like, we're not talking deep South or Texas or, Montana. We're talking a very incredibly mixed state.
Yeah, it's supposed to
And
be
this is
super
still
diverse
happening.
there, and yet.
Yeah.
So.
And yet. So, yeah. So I then also, because of how I viewed school and how I viewed life at that point, I didn't understand why I needed to do homework if I was passing all the tests and participating in class, because I was actively participating in class. I was, as a student, what they call I was a I always had she's a joy to have in class on my report cards throughout elementary school, that I participated well and I was eager to learn, which just basically meant that I was a people pleaser.
Oh my gosh.
So
So sorry to
within
interrupt. I'm so sorry to
it's
interrupt, but I
coded.
have something very important to say. Hey, Thumper. Oh my
Hey,
gosh. I'm
Thumper.
so glad you could join us finally on stream. We're talking about education. So, really, really interesting topic this week. Okay, carry on.
No. So we entered junior year, and I had a report card full of D's and continued to do so because I still didn't do any homework. And I'm talking that I'm getting A's in class and A's on papers and tests and not doing any homework and failing classes. So that takes us all the way up to senior year. I had at this point been in 3 different high schools, vastly different high schools. I had taken 3 summer classes, like 3 summers worth of classes. And I had the decision to take an online class in order to get my degree. And I took the online class. And then I never handed in the work.
Oh
And that
no.
was a lot of my own personal stuff. The school system, the school that I was in was actually tried to handle it very well, tried to push me as much as possible, but frankly, it was my own choice, and I ended up not doing that. And because I didn't turn in a single piece of paper for a year and a half, I didn't graduate until the next year.
Wow.
Uh, so that's my own personal view on it, but that was, and there's a lot of like my stuff there, but the fact that the schools, like, that is what is happening, that there was no other programs or anything like that that I could have done, that there was hoops I had to jump through that were so ingrained within the school system in order for me to get a degree, is really interesting, and I think a problem with our school system, because it doesn't allow any student to act or learn outside of that system,
Mm-hmm.
which
It tries
teaches
to
us
be
how.
it tries to be one size fits all, and let's remember the ultimate
Yeah.
point of the school system, in this country is to prepare you to work, right? And so that's why
Yeah.
it's set up that way, because our the when you get a job, you're expected to do certain things, and so it's kind of like it feeds into each other, right? Like the purpose of the school system is to prepare you to work. Therefore, they institute things that are not actually conducive to learning. They institute things that are not actually conducive to success, because what they're really trying to do is teach you how to hold down a job, right? And
Yep.
so that's why they do those things. So it doesn't come from nowhere. Like the schools don't just decide this because they legitimately think wrong things about how to learn best. They do this because they're trying to prepare you for our working conditions in this country.
Yeah, it's I think it's almost a hypocrisy though, because I think so many people don't say that. So
Yeah,
many people view education as bettering Americans and bettering people, when in reality it's not.
yeah, that's true. Oh my gosh,
Um,
Sasha is here too. Hey, oh my god,
oh,
the
so nice to meet
whole RP needs to get in here. Y'all tell them I said that. I can't believe you're awake, Sasha. You told me you'd never be awake this early for this. Okay. Anyways,
Oh, I like what Angelica. Yeah, Angelica said, trains you to survive off the very little free time and constant state of anxiety. You are
exactly.
100%
Absolutely,
true.
exactly, Thumper. That's Thumper. She had said earlier. You
Oh, is that
probably, yeah,
Thumper? Okay.
but you were talking, so you probably missed it. Yeah, that's Thumper. So yeah, exactly. But people don't say that. People don't say that. And I do think that that's a real problem. Is there's a lot of dishonesty that goes on in the education system that tells you
Hmm.
like, this is how to learn, and that's just a lot of it is just bullshit. It's just not
Well,
true. The truth is that the elementary school and high school is designed so that you can become a good little worker one day. That's the
which
truth.
yeah, which I think, but it also speaks so much to like, I was
Homework doesn't
smart,
help.
right?
Homework doesn't help. Landon, I have like a whole take on that, but you tell me when it's appropriate for me to give my homework take.
Oh,
But
you can,
yes,
if you,
Thumper, homework is BS.
well, and I think that's something that's nice, that there's a debate changing right now about whether homework should exist within, at least within elementary and middle school.
Yep,
High school, people still want to, because high school is again trying to push this narrative that it's preparing you for college, when realistically the system wasn't built that way.
true.
But hi. Sasha. Sorry, I saw my name and I was like, oh, someone's talking to me.
All of our friends are here.
That's nerve wracking. Anyway, if you want to go, let's do this anti homework tirade,
Okay.
because frankly we both agree. So
Okay, so here we go. I didn't realize I was anti homework until I became a corporate trainer in my job, and there was never any reason. There is never any reason, excuse. I don't care what it is. There is no reason to assign people homework. There is no reason
yep,
to assign people homework. If you cannot accomplish what you need to accomplish in your class time, then your syllabus is flawed. Okay, like the amount of hours that you sit in class and learn, people can only do that so much. Okay, so I'm doing it for corporate training first perspective, right? So eight
yep,
hours a day, 8 hours a day, you're supposed to be learning. People cannot sit and learn for 8 hours a day. They can't. And absolutely nobody in the corporate training, adult learning field believes that people can sit and learn for 8 hours a day. So why the hell are we giving people homework so that they end up, quote unquote, working 8 hours? Because that's the point. That's the reason they give you homework. Like the real reason they give you homework in grade school is so that you're working 8 hours, right? Because that's what we're
yep.
doing, right? Remember, we're preparing you to go be a good little worker, right? So
Well,
that's
we
the reason they
also,
give you homework. But in the corporate world, you're already doing the 8 hours. And I already know that you cannot learn 8 hours of material. I never, ever had 8 hours of material in my classrooms. Even when even when I was doing trainings where it was like you were 6 weeks in the classroom before we let you on the job, even when we were doing that, I never had 8 hours of actual learning a day. We would have maybe like 6.5 or so hours. And when you factor in, and then you have a bunch of breaks, right? You have a bunch of breaks, and
yes.
everything was accomplished within class. Homework is BS. You cannot sit and learn for that many hours. There's just only so much new information the brain can take. And that's true no matter how old you are. So, like,
I
I
agree.
hate this. I hate this concept of homework and that you have to do it and that it somehow matters. Like, no, our expectations and syllabuses are flawed. If you have to give homework, then our whole classroom curriculums are flawed from go. So that's my homework take.
So I think that I agree with 90% of what you said. I think that there is such thing as appropriate homework. Um, what is appropriate homework? It's telling a first grader to go home and read a book with their parent. that's appropriate homework, because there are certain aspects of education and learning, especially in elementary school, that is repetition. It's
Absolutely.
reading, it's
Absolutely.
recognizing. And you can't do that for 8 hours, because they will not let you do that for 8 hours. If you've
Right?
ever hung out with an 8-year-old, you understand that things last for 10 minutes. But you still need to figure out how to make them read. So having that sort of homework, I think, is 100% acceptable.
But
The
that's
problem
different.
is when we get to worksheets.
That's
Yeah.
appropriate for the age. And the other big difference in elementary school when it comes to homework is you've got one teacher. So they know how much you've done in the classroom during that day and how much extra work it's going to be to do the homework, right? Whereas in high school, you have like 4, 5, 6 different teachers who aren't talking to each other and don't
Yep.
realize that now you've given these students 4 or 5 hours of homework in a night, because they're not, it's
Yeah.
not like that, you know what I mean? So like that's age appropriate, specific to that situation, and you have one teacher controlling it all, so they can actually, assign appropriate levels of work.
I agree with that. As soon as middle school starts, I think that's when homework gets
Bingo.
ridiculous, because
Bingo.
100%, why are students going home in science class and having to do something that couldn't be discussed and done during the 4 hours of science they have that week?
Yeah, give them activity time in class. It's okay to say we're not lecturing today, we're doing an activity today.
Also,
I do that all the time in my
also
classrooms.
do you know how rare it is a kid, their natural learning ability and natural state of learning is to read something and learn from it?
Yeah.
That's a worked skill. That is a practiced, and it's not something that is naturally inherent. You were not born with the ability to read something and then understand it. You had to practice it, which means that if you, at any point in time, because you have because you're dyslexic, or you didn't have as much exposure to reading when you were a kid, or anything like that, along the way through your education, you suddenly find it so much harder to be able to read something and recite what it says.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's so frustrating that is also 90% of what the homework is like, read this thing and then write a response. Like, no, just lecture your kids on it.
Yeah, no,
Anyway,
we did that
but
all, and and for adult learners, like this is a totally normal activity to do, and say, hey, we're gonna do this reading. The reading should take everybody about 20 minutes. Everybody, raise your hand when you're done, so that I know when you're done. When everybody's done, we're gonna talk about it, right? And then we
yep.
would have quiet time while people read for like 20 minutes, and that was considered appropriate classroom time. It gave me time to answer my emails and stuff like that, and there was never an expectation that, like, as adults you're not supposed to spend classroom time, doing these types of activities. The expectation is you do that in class.
Yep.
So
Um
some comments that I see that I want to call out. Why is
yes.
the amount of homework increased over the years, training the wage slaves harder for the future? Well, we do know that productivity has increased and wages have not increased in this country. That is a fact. So I'm sure that's connected. Not going
Well,
to comment too much more on that, but yeah, there's clearly a connection there.
I actually think that homework increase over the years is related to what Thumper says, that the amount of stuff kids need to know.
Yeah.
The level of expectation of what a person learns in their academic career is so different than it was 50 years ago, 30
That's
years
true.
ago, 10 years ago.
That's true.
Education is only getting harder and harder, and the tools to be able to learn it are getting smaller and smaller. And so there is more work and more work that kids have to do. And because of that, they are expected to know more. Therefore, they have to do more homework,
That is true. I think that's true. Yeah.
which is terrible.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, homework bad. When I'm a teacher, I won't do homework.
Yeah.
That is a guarantee to all of you.
Well, we hope, right? We hope, because it's not the individual teacher's fault, right? It's the system pushing them in that way.
Yes, that's
So
true too.
so I just we hope you won't have to assign homework, but if you find yourself having to assign homework, I would understand, because I'm sure a lot of these teachers don't want to give homework and have to.
Yes, it's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot.
Um, so very quickly back to, because my story is not finished with education.
Okay, yes.
I am having a very different but also similar experience in college, and that's being that trying to figure out the hoops that someone has to jump through in order to get a degree is extremely frustrating. I knew they existed, and they existed to make it so that having a degree can be considered a rarity and a privilege, and that you had to work for it. But the fact that it takes so much effort and you have to learn so many things about shit you don't need to know in order to just get a job is ridiculous. And
That's
that's all
true.
I really kind of wanted to say about college.
Thumper says grad school is hoops to the 10th power. Man, I believe it. Sometimes
Well, I
I
mean,
I think about going back to school, because I really do like learning and that sort of thing. But one, it's too expensive, so that's the reality of what's holding me back.
oh
But the
yeah.
other thing that's holding me back is just like just the amount of like stuff that has nothing to do with what I'd actually want to study is the other part of it.
Oh my God. The fact that all I want to do is teach, and I'm talking teach small children. I'm not talking teach Shakespeare. And
Hmm.
how much Shakespeare I had to read in order to get a degree to teach small children is ridiculous.
So, what we have learned today is Landon has a huge hate boner for Shakespeare. Don't at her. No Shakespeare for Landon.
Any Shakespeare and anything from the Romance period, I don't need to read Frankenstein again. I don't need to read
Oh,
anything
I like
by any
Frankenstein.
Shelley.
That's a good
No,
book.
stop.
I'm so sorry, but I have a similar thought with because I grew up in Alabama. We read To Kill a Mockingbird like 4 times. Like I read that book like 4 times, 4 different years during my middle school
Oh,
and high school
same.
career. And it's a wonderful book, but don't talk to
No.
me about it. I don't want to. I don't want to hear nothing about To Kill
I
a Mockingbird.
To be completely honest, if I could go through the rest of my life without hearing the words Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, To Kill a Mockingbird, or Catcher in the Rye, I would die happy. Not because they're terrible books. They're well-written books, but they need to stop.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of The Catcher in the Rye for similar reasons too. It's just too much. It's just
So,
like too much.
but basically, the education. Oh, well, I think also something that you were saying, as far as what the education system is to train us to be good workers.
Yeah.
We also need to acknowledge what the education system really is childcare.
Yeah, that's true. It's a lot of childcare too.
We when the school system when the universal school system within the United States it became into existence, it wasn't about what people had to learn. It had nothing to do with actually the kids at all. It was about that parents needed to go and plow the fields without worrying about their kids killing themselves.
Yeah, it's because they needed a
Um,
spot to stick them during the day
yeah,
while they did
and
stuff
it
that they
became
needed to do.
and it became illegal for those places to be factories or
Yep.
farms
So it's like
because
if they're
there was
not
child
working,
labor. Yeah, there was child labor before there was school.
yep,
And so as soon as child labor became illegal and they had to invent a place for those children to be so that the parents can work.
yep,
And that's when they invented school. And so the pure reason that the school system exists is for childcare,
yep.
which is also what brings us into the fact that, sorry, and this is my little own rant, and we cannot discuss it for very long if we don't want to,
You're
but the
good.
fact that coronavirus
Oh gosh.
and they are pushing us to go back to school this fall is because 100% for that same reason of childcare. No one has childcare because of how the system is working, and therefore we need to put the kids in school no matter whose lives it is risking.
You ain't wrong.
And it's disgusting.
Yep. I mean, yeah, absolutely. That's 100% what the situation is. The reason why we want schools to reopen is so that we have a spot to stick the kids while the parents go back to work.
Yep.
Because we've decided we're reopening no matter what.
Which is just so terrible.
Yeah. I mean,
I have so many.
we spent like a whole episode talking about the pandemic, so I don't want to get like too much onto that.
Yeah, no.
But it's related, so I do think it's worth a mention. And I think you're absolutely right.
Well, I think
You know?
and I think it's so much more complicated than people are talking about too, because for like without getting into it hugely, but like the fact that Thumper says that there and says that DeVos will basically be willing to kill thousands of children
Mm,
before the economy dies. So it's just once again showing that the economy is more important than its people.
mm-hmm.
That no one is thinking about any contracts. The fact that all of these teachers don't have in their contracts that they're willing to put their life on the line. And so every single teacher reunion has to redo contracts within the next month.
Yeah, that's impossible. That's impossible.
And
Rewriting all those contracts and getting everyone to agree on them in that amount of time.
it's
Just straight up impossible.
So here, and I think that I think that if a teacher strike happened, it would be interesting. That's all I'm going to say on the subject.
Yes, it would, and I would not be surprised if it became if in a couple months when the schools start to reopen, and I know it's different for every district and every situation, based on what they have available, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see some striking. I really wouldn't.
We'll see. But I also think it's incredibly difficult because, with other things happening and no guarantee of where paychecks are coming and no one's hiring, a strike could be incredibly devastating for a family that needs to feed its kids.
Yeah, yeah,
More so now than any other time. So
it's a tough situation.
I think that this is just going to turn into and involve a very tough situation, but that it's all related to the fact that we need childcare, apparently.
Yep.
Woohoo! Um,
Yay.
yeah.
And that brings us
So
up to the present in our
that does
history
bring us up to
section.
the present. Okay, so I think the next topic that we wanted to kind of go into was this idea of education outside of the school system. That
Yes.
there is this idea that you go to school to learn. But I know for me, I did most of my learning not in school.
Mm-hmm.
I did my learning through experience. And so I don't know if you have any examples of that, or if you have any ideas of how, like, there are some ways that we can learn outside of the school system.
Yes. So, I ended up going into education. It kind of happened on accident, but I ended up going to sort of an education type of field. Um, you know, I, I have always valued learning. Like that has always been something that is incredibly valuable to me. Even during the year and a half that I struggled and decided school was for losers, right? It wasn't really
Yeah.
about school being for losers. It was about our current system not serving me in a way that I needed. Um, so even when it comes to that, like I was still always interested in learning. Like I'm the nerd who will look at something nonfiction, and you can totally tell this when you look at my YouTube subscriptions. Like I absolutely love educational channels. Like PBS and Discovery both have a ton of educational channels on YouTube, and I'm subscribed to so many of them, and I watch so many of their videos, and just I feel like for me, I'm not mentally healthy if I'm not regularly learning new things. So I am always trying to find new pieces of information and new things that I think are interesting, and new things that I find enriching, and and I think when I'm not learning, when I'm not like taking in new information, then I really suffer. And then to relate it back to role play, I feel like a critical part of the role playing experience for me is researching. And
Yeah.
I can't imagine. Like I can't imagine role playing without, you know, having to Google things every so often because I want to write something that I don't know enough about. Because that's the
You
whole
mean
appeal, right? Is to do something that I'm not going to do in real life. Yeah, go
you mean
ahead.
it, you mean you don't inherently know which, sniper gun to use to kill someone? Like
Man, no. And I had to look into all of that stuff, for Abby to make sure that I, was writing something that it was at least semi-plausible, right? Not that I actually think anybody who knows like how to snipe someone's going to read it and judge me, right? But I don't want to be writing stuff just to write stuff. Like I want to write stuff because it helps me, understand others and grow empathy and experience things that I wouldn't otherwise experience. So for me, research is like just such a huge part of role play. And then to relate
yeah.
it to like my job as a corporate trainer, I'm often training things that I have no idea about. They're not my area of expertise. I don't know what I'm doing. And so my role in that is to be a researcher, to go learn the basics and learn from the experts in what it is that people tend to miss, and figure out how to take that information, right, and package it in a way that normie that's never seen this information can digest it and learn from it and all of those things. So like I'm constantly learning new stuff, both for the role play channel that I'm doing on YouTube, for the actual role plays that I'm doing, and in my job. And I just could not imagine living any other way. I really couldn't.
Yeah. I think, well, like for me, I think that what school, one of the really like terrible things school did for me was teach me what is education and what is learning. And that's things like reading books and knowing facts and this, that, and the other thing, when really experiences themselves are incredibly important to learning.
Absolutely.
Uh, that in order for me to understand emotional emotional like situations when talking about characters and things like that, I don't know what it's like to lose a child, right? I have never had that sort of grief, but being able to go and research and learn and educate myself about what happens to the body, to the brain, to the emotional reaction, to other characters or people who have gone through this, being able to have that sense of, oh, this has happened to people before, let's figure out how to make this realistic to my character, is incredibly important.
Yeah, absolutely. Sasha, don't hold back those jokes. They might be
Please.
hilarious, and we want to read them if they are. Me doing tons of stupid shit. I'm doing research. Yeah, that's true
It's
though.
actually true.
It's
Well,
kind
like,
of true. Sometimes you just want to know firsthand. And no, I don't think that anybody should go out actually doing things that are going to harm themselves or going to have like any kind of long term negative effects. But
that's why I
sometimes
don't.
you do need to have a certain amount of experiences before you can really write a certain topic. Like that's legit and that's true. Like there's
Well,
certain things that if you can't experience it, you're just not going to be able to write it in a way that someone that has experienced it can write it.
well, the basic number one rule of how to write is write what you know, right?
Yeah.
That's what every English professor, creative writing teacher, person who, I mean, I think you even
Yeah.
In your YouTube series said that, like, where do you start? You write with what you know. How could
Yeah.
you write with insistence and knowledge on things that you have no clue about?
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so I think that that is the incredibly like important piece of role play, is to do research, is to push yourself and learn,
Yep.
and write.
And
And I
I
think that the ways, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was actually gonna backtrack very slightly to what you said about how experiences,
Yeah.
is really what taught you, and I think that that's really super true. So I'm gonna say something that I shouldn't say. We're gonna peek behind the curtain, and some
Uh-oh.
things that y'all shouldn't know. But watching my videos isn't actually gonna help you be a better role player. It's not.
True.
It's not. Um, all I'm doing, all I'm doing in my videos is setting your expectations so that you have the knowledge to be able to go have the experiences to become a better role player. Watching my videos isn't going to make you a better role player. I can't do that for you. All I'm doing is giving lectures so that you have things to think about and you have things to go try. That's all I'm doing. That's all I'm doing. So yeah, if you want to be a better role player, the videos aren't really going to make you do that. They're just going to set your expectations. That's all I'm doing.
Well, I think they also point you down the path of where to go too, right?
Well,
I
yeah, that's
think,
it. That's the point, right? That's what we're
yeah,
trying to do.
is that you sit there and you go, how do you start? It's a starting point.
Yes, it's a starting
Um,
point, but that's all it can ever be. That's all it can ever be. Watching the videos is not putting in the work. The only way you're actually going to become a better YouTube or better role player is to put in the work in role play.
well, I think that's kind of everything, right? The only way you're going to become better at anything is to do the work.
Yep.
So the only way that you're going to understand a character more or be able to write this character better is to put in the work, to learn yourself, to learn, to educate, to understand all the complexities with a character or a world even. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's also a huge part of it that we're not talking about, is world building. You need, in order to like understand mob dynamics, there was research that needed to be done about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in regards to the current role play that we're doing where, I asked a lot of questions because I just never role played or really researched the stuff before, and mob stuff just wasn't really my thing. But there was a lot of work in there in those initial stages. Absolutely. There's
Yeah.
a couple of funny comments. Thumper says, "This is the work that Britney Spears was singing about." That's right. And then Sasha says, "What do you mean watching people exercise isn't the same thing as lifting weights?" Right? Like exactly. I mean, I'm saying
I'm
that.
pretty sure it is.
I'm saying that like it's obvious, but at the same time, like I'm saying it because I know there are people out there that believe that because they watch my videos, they're good role players, and it's like well, those things are correlated, but the causation isn't there, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So for context, for those of you who are watching the VOD or listening or anything like that, we have the lovely pleasure of writing with Sasha and Thumper in Atlantis, and they are the jokesters. So there's lots of jokes happening on the screen, I am sure.
Oh yeah, and they'll see it on the VOD.
Oh, good.
But yeah, so they'll see it like pop up before I call it out. But yeah, absolutely,
But
absolutely.
well, yeah, and I mean to kind of not relate it to role play, but to relate it to my life, right? I did the most learning in my life the 2 semesters I was abroad.
Mm,
That is, I went abroad to teach in Tanzania for 1 semester, and then I also did a multi-country visit, and I learned more about people and the world doing that than I ever could sitting behind a book or a computer screen or anything like that. And I understand that that is an incredible privilege that I had to be able to do that. But going out and doing things, meeting people, understanding cultures, interviewing, talking to people are all things that can happen around you right now that could open your views on how things are viewed, and because of that will also then open more doors to other subjects that you didn't even know were related.
right, like maybe you can't travel, right, because that is something
Yeah,
that takes a lot of money and a lot of time that most people do not have. But what you can do is look up, vloggers and bloggers in those other areas that are talking
exactly.
about their experiences. Because of the internet, the state that the internet is in right now, you can find whatever kind of perspective you want from whatever kind of person you want. Like, it's all out there. It's just a Google search away, so all of that
Well,
stuff is available. All of that stuff is available if you just take the time to look for it and you take the time to talk to the right people.
and not to get all self-helpy and stuff like that, but situations that make us uncomfortable are also because of situations we don't understand. So
Absolutely.
you can also solve a lot of the issues that you are like uncomfortable with certain aspects or certain ideas, especially in the political climate. Being able to have those conversations and seek answers and educate yourself outside of what our realm of education is can solve that confusion. It might not change your opinion, but at least you won't be uncomfortable or confused by things because you understand how people are thinking or working or what ideas are around and existing.
So you can understand like how people come to those types of conclusions and things like that, and
Exactly.
how people live in those ways that you're not understanding, and all that good stuff.
And that's all part of education, right? That's all part of educating yourself and learning how to be a better person, citizen, or even just a person of this world. Like it's all part of that.
Yeah. So Sasha has a good comment of something that we can touch on with this because it's very true. So she says, I will briefly say that it's much riskier to self-educate these days because I think a lot of people aren't trained in media literacy. Yeah, a lot of people are not trained in media literacy, and I think that this kind of goes back to a comment and that I know we eventually want to talk about. So we might circle back to it, or now if you tell
Yeah,
me that's cool, Landon. But
go for it.
something that I think our education system does not prepare us for is basic problem solving, critical thinking, and troubleshooting skills. Like, it just doesn't. Um, and I think that that's where a lot of issues happen because we don't teach people that at a young age. Then they really struggle to actually develop the research skills that are needed to go find the information that they're looking to find without stumbling upon stuff that's truly false, or in worst case scenarios harmful. And I think that is something that really it goes back to how our education system is there to is
Yeah.
designed to train you to become a worker, and so we don't really spend a lot of time training you on how to properly think and solve problems because we don't want you to do that. We just want you to go to work and do what your boss tells you and then go home. So without those skills, researching can be difficult.
Well,
Yeah,
without getting
reading
too
comprehension is hard. Yes, reading comprehension is hard.
it is 100% hard. And without getting too like conspiracy theory too, but we don't necessarily want a country full of people who can actively think and problem solve for themselves, because then it becomes the people's whose job it is to do that becomes significantly harder because more people can do that job.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. I think that if we had more people that could do a lot of that thinking on their own, then it would be easier for those people because then they could pass on the more true information, right? Whereas what happens right now is that there's so many people out there just grifting, giving false information, and the reason they're able to do that is because nobody knows how to think, right? Nobody knows how to problem solve. You know what I mean? So I think that not teaching
Well,
people that kind of makes the lives harder of those that are trying to get out the true information that's really good.
I'm I think that yes and no, it makes their lives harder, but I think that's because of the invention of the internet. If we're looking at the education system as a whole and how long it's been in place, when W was in charge, that the internet wasn't that big of a problem.
Yeah, not
Mis
really.
false information, when the idea of really solidifying not problem solving and solidifying teaching to a test with no child left behind, uh, that is when that really was solidified within our country. And because of that, the internet, or during that time, the internet wasn't really spread with as much misinformation as it is now. I would argue that within the last 10 years is really, probably even like 6 years, is
Hmm.
really when the like wildfire of, hey, by the way, if you read it on the internet, it doesn't mean it's true, kind of existed.
Yeah. And I think that we do need to take some radical steps to adjust to this new reality because it's not going away
Oh yeah.
anytime soon. Like we're not going to get
Well,
rid of the internet. It's not going to stop. So like we have to adjust to that reality where now we all have to be excellent researchers just to survive.
Well, I also think it's going to get worse way before it gets better, because also think of the things that are available to people. They can now
Mhm.
publish themselves, like in books. People can write vast, terrible theories and that are filled with inaccuracy and half truths. Publish that on any self-publishing website, or Amazon or anything like that, and then it's published.
Yep.
It's a fact of record. It is then more legitimized because of that.
Yep.
And that's incredibly scary. So it's not even just, I mean, that has to do with the internet a little bit, making that so much easier. But it's not even just the internet that stuff is happening.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that the internet and the quickness with which stuff spreads now changes a lot of things.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
100%.
and change is hard and change is scary. So I know there's like a lot of people out there that they think we can just keep going on with what we have right now, and we clearly can't. Like we can't. There's no way.
Yeah, I mean, we can't for multiple reasons. One being that the education system isn't really teaching anything anymore. It's not letting you be a critical thinker.
Mm-hmm.
You're not asked or taught those skills until college, which is hidden behind a paywall,
Yep.
and a paywall of privilege that a lot of people can't access.
Yeah. Thumper, that's like some really that so that's like the really interesting contrast, right? Is that academic publishing kind of has the opposite problem because it's kind of gated to the elite, and to older people that have been in this for a long time. It's really hard to get even true ideas through if those true ideas go against accepted norms and values, right? So that's like the problem in the opposite direction, right? Like it's too closed off. So then if an idea turns out to be new and true, but it kind of like rocks the current status quo, then they also don't want you to talk about it. But it's like that's just messed up. You should be able to get your ideas out there, but the what ended up the internet, which allowed everybody to get their ideas out there, also opened up the floodgates for a lot of people to put out just totally harmful, wrong ideas that are hurting us now.
Thumper, I think what you said is extremely important, as far as therefore the elite and the biased people get to dictate what is considered correct. And you are 100% true, which
Yeah.
like, and that's in behind a paywall as well, is that there's this idea of, because you are part of the secret club of academics, that you are inherently right, which if you are an expert in something, you belong within that club. I agree, but it also makes it extremely impossible to access any of the information that is coming from that club without being part of that club,
Yep.
which kind of leaves the lower class, or the people who are unaware, without a clue of what's going on.
Yeah. It really sucks. And yeah, so I mean, we have this whole mistrust of academics, and that's what you're touching on with that comment. And in a way, like, I get it. Like, I get why people wouldn't want to trust academics, even though they have a lot of times the more researched information, the more correct information, things like that. But in reality, like, it all goes back to like our systems and how they interwork and the way that the internet is disrupting that. And
Yes.
we just aren't prepared for it. We just aren't prepared for it.
Yeah, whoever opened the can of worms that was the internet had no idea of how
No,
this would affect the world
we didn't
in
know.
positive ways and negative ways. I am extremely grateful that in order to figure out what brand of poison I need to kill someone via character, we're not talking real life, we're talking character. Uh, I'm a Google search away from
Yeah,
that. Whereas before, I'd probably have to have like a book about it in my library.
you'd have to go to the library.
Yeah, that's
Amazing.
true. What are those? Libraries?
I don't know, man. Haven't been in one of those in how many months now?
We're
Although,
going on 147 days.
oh my
So I
gosh,
just actually made that number up. So I think it's around there, but
I
I
don't know.
actually
That
don't
sounds
know.
right. I don't know.
We're going to go with it.
I know
False
that
information
I know
spreading.
that the first day that I was told don't come into the office, work from home was March 16th, I think, or whatever Monday was close to that. It was somewhere around there, like mid March, and I think it was March 16th, Monday, March 16th, I think, um, or something close to that if I'm wrong on that
Yeah.
exact date. So yeah, it's been a hot minute. It's been a hot minute.
It's been a little while.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that the concept of being able to be a critical thinker and ask questions and know how to truly read things without spewing the facts or looking for answers and then being able to explore upon your findings is something that not a lot of people have access to or the ability to do, which
Yeah.
is inherently, as both of us consider ourselves educators, um inherently sad to me.
Yeah, so
To
that
be
kind
like,
of it is sad, but I think it's because we talk out of both sides of our mouths in a way. So this is another thing that I want to bring up in regards to this topic is convergent versus divergent thinking, right?
yes,
So these are two different problem solving troubleshooting techniques, right? So convergent thinking is essentially like when you have a list of possible solutions and you do a bunch of things to try to determine which of those, like, I don't know, 10 solutions or whatever is the actual solution to your problem. This is super, super useful for things like troubleshooting computers because a computer is, you know, designed. So there's only going to be so many possible solutions before you reach whatever is true about what's happening with that computer because it's programmed, right? So that's kind of convergent thinking. And then divergent thinking is when you're told, think outside the box. So divergent thinking is when your problem is something like, draw me a house. And there's a lot of different ways to draw a picture of a house, and none of them are exactly right, and none of them are exactly wrong, and it's up to interpretation. So you're just as much, you know, trying to figure out you know, just picking away and making it work as opposed to like picking, you know, the right way. And we spend a lot of time in our education system telling people to think outside the box and to be creative and to have new ideas. But the reality is we don't actually encourage that. The reality is we encourage convergent thinking. And these two things, like, these aren't bad. Like, convergent versus divergent thinking, it's not like one's good and one's bad. They're just two different ways to approach problems. But we are so into the idea of convergent thinking that we don't ever use divergent thinking, to the point that I think a lot of times when
yeah,
we do use divergent thinking, when someone does get creative, we get very uncomfortable. We get very uncomfortable with, like, oh, this is not what I expected. Oh, wait, is this the right answer? And it's like, I don't know. Does it actually solve the problem? If it does it really matter if it's right? In some cases, it does, and in some cases, it doesn't, right? So yeah, exactly. Thumper says, be creative, but not too creative. I think that's a lot of, you know, what we expect of people. We expect them to be creative, but somehow still work within the status quo. Which, like, if you're using a lot of divergent thinking, then you're going to be moving outside of the status quo very quickly because that's how you become and be creative. So that whole, like, how we solve problems by in this country, and encouraged by our education system and our working system to do that, is to only use convergent thinking and like never use divergent thinking, because that's the reality of what we actually encourage people to do regardless of what we say. We end up with people that can't properly problem solve, that they believe that the answers are on this list, and if it's off of the list then it's not a possible answer and I shouldn't even try it. And that, I feel like, is really what hurts us in a lot of these things that we talk about, with like not having good reading comprehension and not having good problem solving skills and da 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 da. Is because we beat divergent thinking out of people in our school systems. We really do.
Yes. Oh, 100%. I mean, it is, look at multiple choice answers, right?
Yeah.
We're taught, like, I know that that's small and it doesn't reflect the whole thing, but it's a very clear example of the answer is one of these four things.
Yep. Or like doing
Period. End of story.
or like how math classes tell you have to show your work. Like, I get why math classes tell you have to show your work, because they want to make sure that you didn't just guess, right? But at the same time, like, there's sometimes multiple ways to solve the same math problem, and
Yep.
in school you get deducted points if you do it a different way than what the teacher taught you, and that's not right. Like, I don't like that. That's not right, because it tells people that there is a right answer instead of just
Yep.
getting an answer that works. And I
Well, it
wish there
also,
was more emphasis on find an answer that works and less emphasis on find the one right answer.
yeah. Well, it also exists in the, like, the idea. This is a very small example that I have from my own math class this last semester, that I was taught one way to solve a multiplication problem. We're talking, like, 176 times 538. I was
Okay.
taught one way on how to solve that
Mm-hmm.
when I was in elementary school. And I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. I struggled through it, which is why I use a calculator to solve 90% of my math problems.
Mm-hmm.
But then last semester, when I'm teaching, when I'm learning how to teach math, I find out that there are 5, 6 different ways to solve it, and that was never made available to me because there was a right or correct way on doing it, which sucks.
Yeah, that
Like,
really
that, the fact
sucks.
that even as a fourth, fifth grader, I didn't even know that there were other possibilities, and I failed because I didn't have access to those other possibilities.
Yep. And I mean, I really didn't learn how to do math until I got into the working world, right? Until I got into the world and was faced with real math problems that I had to solve because I had to solve them to accomplish something in my job, right?
Yep.
So I really didn't learn math until after school. I suffered through it as best as I could, to pass. But I really didn't know what I was doing most of the time. And I do believe it's a lot of because I was told, here's this abstract problem, no context around it a lot of times, and then you have to solve it in this one and only way, and you can't do anything else. And I do think that really, really hurt me when it came to math, and is part of why math was my worst subject. I'm not actually bad at math, as it turns out. I'm actually pretty darn good at math and pretty good at thinking about numbers when I'm not forced into this one little box to do it.
Yeah, I think that is a huge problem. Like, I think this kind of just relates back to the school system and everything like that. Standardization is important, right? We want to make sure that we are all have access to the same um, education and the same tools and everything like that, and so that's necessary within
Yeah.
school
Like,
districts
it's good for a
and
population to
systems.
all have a similar working knowledge pool so that you can
Yeah,
reasonably assume that other people know similar things that you do. Like, that's useful. Like, so.
but it also just throws everyone into a box to sit there and be like, oh, this is the acceptable way on how to teach it because everyone can understand it this way. We can't be outside of this box,
Yep.
and therefore you have to learn inside of this box, even though there's so much more to education than that. But
Exactly.
this is the important stuff, and that is incredibly disheartening.
Yeah, so Thumper says there can be more than one tool. Exactly. And I
Yeah.
really did not learn that until I started doing troubleshooting in a software troubleshooting call center when I started working, and I started having to like actually solve problems all the time, every single day. And I would say, if you're kind of listening to this and you feel like this speaks to you, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not as creative as I really want to be. A lot of times I do get myself stuck in what is the right answer as opposed to what is an answer that accomplishes what I want to accomplish. And my advice to you actually would be a book called The Art of Troubleshooting. It's a free book, and you can Google it. It's good SEO, so if you Google The Art of Troubleshooting, you'll find it. And this is the book that we used at one of the companies that I worked for to build a troubleshooting and problem solving course. So everything that I learned about it and that we ended up designing is based off of that book, and it is a wonderful tool that teaches you really about how to think and how to problem solve in a way that utilizes both convergent and divergent thinking when it's appropriate. Now, I don't, it's been a really long time since I've actually read the book, but I don't think he actually talks about it in terms of convergent or divergent thinking. It's not like an academic book or anything. It really is like a real life problem solving book. So he doesn't talk about it in that academic way, but since the learning that I've done since then has shown me that really is what he's talking about. What he's really teaching you to do in this book is when to use convergent and when to use divergent thinking, and what the really good problem solvers and troubleshooters do to actually accomplish that. And it's a wonderful, wonderful book. Highly recommend it to anybody who feels like they're struggling with always trying to get the right answer instead of just trying to get the answer that works.
Yeah. It's good to know, because I think that is an important skill that as writers we also need to understand
Mm-hmm.
and break free of. I think a lot of this idea of right and wrong ways to get there, or to develop something, or to plan something,
It's
we could just
harmful.
be, yeah, it's harmful, and we could just be better writers and creatives in general if we were able to break out of that box.
Yeah, because we're putting words on paper, right? Like that's all we're really
Yeah.
doing. And so there is no right way. There's no right way. Because you're only limited by however many words you know, right? So there is never going to be like a right answer of how to write something or how to craft something or anything like that. So I think that when it comes to writing and role playing, getting stuck in that pattern of there are right answers to things is very, very harmful.
Yeah. I am, to kind of go off of that too. I think Thumper and Sasha are having an interesting back and forth. That Thumper said, I am very good with divergent thinking right up until it involves social interaction, because people have secret rules.
Mm.
And Sasha says they aren't secret if you just know how to study them very hard. Um, I think
It takes practice, right? It takes practice, just like
it
everything
takes
else.
practice. And I think what Thumper is saying is completely justified. That's right. Social interactions are so much harder because there are like this idea of secret rules, and the divergence of what is right and right wrong, versus like, because there's so many layers to people as far as like what is culturally
Hmm.
acceptable in all of these things, and
And then you
what
have to
is
take
personally.
and you take their personal history into account, and like
And
it
it's
just
like,
takes time. It takes
and
time
here
to
in the
learn other
United States,
people.
it's like, and here in the United States, it's like, okay, what is culturally acceptable within the United States? What is culturally
Hmm.
acceptable within their state that they're at? What is culturally acceptable within the relationship that I have with this person?
Yep.
And what is also acceptable uh, as far as what this person wants?
Yeah. So I mean, even though like to the state comment, I just want to touch on that because like we are one country, but like anybody who lives here can tell you we're not. We're really 50 countries that
No.
all try to
Yeah.
pretend that we're one country.
I
Anybody
would
who's lived in
argue that
multiple
New
states
England
knows that.
I would argue that New England is all one state, as long as you leave out Connecticut,
Oh
because we
my
don't
gosh.
know. She's the ugly stepsister.
I know nothing about Connecticut, so I'm going to pretend like that's hilarious. No context, don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and then the city of New York is different than the state of New York. So we're actually like 100 different countries in one country.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. What is culturally okay within the standard, within the idea of like North Carolina, is very different from what is okay in Maine
Yep.
or Colorado or
Yep.
California. It's a
and
lot.
and my advice when it comes to social interaction, so since it was asked, let me just address that. Lurk more. Like the rules of the internet
Yeah.
mostly are BS, but that one actually is a very good rule that I hate that we keep forgetting it in our modern online discourse, but people need to lurk more. Like you don't when you first come into a shoot, I was talking and I got distracted from the anyway. When you first come into a community, you often don't know what is socially acceptable within that community, and the only way you're going to learn is by just watching them for a minute. Just
Yeah.
watch how they interact. Ask questions. Don't seek to put your 2 cents in at first, and then just kind of like go from there. And you can figure out what you need to figure out by just taking a moment to observe and be the question asker instead of the question answerer.
Yeah. I also think it's extremely important to understand, and this obviously will not cure anxiety or any social interaction or anything like that, but you have your own secret rules too. So
Yes.
the person sitting across from you in the coffee shop on the other side of the chat, who knows, is just as nervous and just as trying to figure out your secret rules as you are trying to figure out theirs. And that there's a lot
Yep.
of forgiveness between two people because that's what happens. Faux pas happen. There are jokes that I say that just don't land.
Oh yeah.
And
I mean, I've pissed some people off before, like really, really hurt them, and I thought it was
yeah,
just a joke, but it wasn't for them, and I didn't know that. And then by the time it comes out your mouth, it's too late, and the best you can do is say, "I'm really, really sorry," but and hope they forgive you, but that's on them. Like they don't have to, But that's happened to me
I
too.
I think that there's also the conversation that's kind of continued in the chat about social anxiety and awkwardness, and I think that this is just trying to I social having social anxiety is something I think separate that is a lot heavier than what we're talking about. I think most people are very nervous to interact with new people.
Oh, I think so too.
Um,
But you know what? That would be a really great stream topic. So I mean, y'all are welcome to
oh
continue
yeah,
continue in the chat, whatever. That's fine. But I think that probably Landon and I will leave that topic there. But I think we should add it to our future possible stream topics: social
social
awkwardness in
awkwardness.
online and role play communities specifically,
Oh,
because that's a whole thing that we could really get into, don't you think?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I am perfectly capable of socializing with everybody.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, perfect, perfect in every way all the time, right?
that is my brand. I'm sticking to it. Uh, so very quickly, back to education. We discussed like ways to learn outside of the school system. What are ways that we as educators can teach outside of the school system? How can we, and even as people, how can we make sure that people are getting the correct information when there's a lot of misinformation being spread
Yeah.
across the United States? How can we do that in
So
different ways that are just not go read this article?
yeah, right. Because just sending people a bunch of links, that's pretty off-putting, right? And it really doesn't. At least I have not had good success with that.
Well,
Maybe sending
it's
one link
literally
is good, but like when you barrage someone with a lot of information that they can't process, like it becomes overwhelming and they kind of shut down.
well, and it's also literally the same thing as like, here, have some homework.
Yeah,
Like me
it
sitting there
is.
and sending you the link. It's like, oh, I expect you to learn this and then give me a response to give me a 500-word response onto this article. It's like, no, that's not how this is going to work.
Yeah. So what I think is really important when you're trying to if you're trying to help someone learn, or you've taken that on, or they've asked you a question that you decide you want to answer, things like that. I think what's most important, or at least what I've found is most important, is providing people safe spaces to be wrong. I think that being scared of being wrong or being scared of being socially ostracized because of your wrong opinion or being punished because of your wrong opinion in some way or whatever, I think that is where I found the most success is when I have been able to successfully navigate the social situations that the other person feels safe and that wrongness is not a threat. So admitting when I'm wrong, I think is really helpful in actually cultivating that. I think, not attacking them when they are wrong and just instead asking questions and being gentle with them when they are wrong is really helpful with that. Techniques like that. So if you can figure out how to allow someone to feel like when they're wrong it's okay and it's still safe, then you have done a huge amount of the work in fostering an environment that's appropriate for learning.
I agree. Um, treat it with kindness too. Like basically what you said is treat them with kindness. Have a conversation. I think also assuming I go into conversations like that where I'm educating someone or I think someone needs to be educated, also being very aware that I am not going to be 100% right. I
Yeah,
might think that I'm 100% right, and I'm not saying that my opinion has to change, but there could be room for growth. They could say something that I'm completely unaware of.
yep,
And I can't just shoot them down and expect them to listen to me if I am going to like expect them, and I can't shut them down and expect them to listen to me if I'm not going to pay them the same courtesy.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, just a little caveat. because we're talking about online discourse, there are bad actors out there that
Uh-huh.
that they're not trying to learn, they're just trying to waste your time, right?
Yes.
So we're not talking about those people. We're talking about the people that are genuinely trying to learn something or are genuinely looking for help, not the people that pretend like they're trying to learn something when in reality they're just trying to waste your time. And I know it is like freaking impossible to tell the difference. I know it's impossible to tell the difference until you're like in the middle of the conversation, already having the conversation, and it's too late, right? But just to be clear, I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the
But
people that really do want to learn.
I don't think that that is too late at that point, right? Because you can't tell the difference. So
You
sitting there
can't.
and you recognize where your boundary is and how much energy you have to allocate to this situation.
Yep.
And when you reach that point and you recognize that it's not going anywhere or the discourse is turning in a direction that you don't want it to turn, then you have every right to sit there and be like, you know what? I'm not here for this right now, or I'm going to close this chat, or I'm going to just yeet it out of here.
Yeah,
You
like
have you have every valid reason to do that,
yeah, I
and you
think
can.
it's okay to say like I'm sorry, this was way deeper than I thought it was when I started this conversation. I'm out of this conversation now. Like I think that is totally valid.
Or just sitting there and being like, I can see that we are not going to come to an agreement.
Yep.
Bye.
Yeah.
Like, just it doesn't even have to be anything. I can see that this is going nowhere. Bye.
Yeah. And you know, if you're in a space that's more of like a social media space and not really like a community space, the block button is your friend. Use it.
Oh,
Like you're
that's
not a
so
bad
true.
person for blocking people. You're not evil for blocking people. You're not admitting fault or conceding wins to them by blocking them. You are a person with only so much time and so much energy, and only you know when you have reached your capacity. So block
Yeah.
is your friend. Don't be scared of it. Is my other piece of advice there.
I think also it's important to talk about like how to relate this to this particular situation and stuff like that within role play.
Yeah.
That there is, like, the United States is a country with a culture. Role plays will have their culture,
Yep.
especially group role plays. And if you, whatever you want to educate that group about does not want to be educated, that is not the group for you.
Yeah. Maybe you just need to find a different group. Maybe you just need to find a different role play partner. And there's like so many out there. Like there's so many groups out there. There's so many role players out there. I mean, this is a niche hobby, but also because the bar to entry is so low, there's so many people out there. I do not think it's worth wasting time on people that you ultimately don't jive with, you know? Like life is short. Find partners you like. You know?
Yeah. Find partners you like, and also find a community that you like we kind of talked about last week as far as villains and how Tumblr got very anti. That was the culture that Tumblr turned into.
Mhm.
We didn't view it as wrong. We didn't view that, or we didn't view it, what we were doing as wrong. We didn't view what they were insisting upon as correct. So we just left and found somewhere else.
Yep, exactly. Like, cause
And
there's no, I can't change a whole culture. You know, I can't change
no,
a whole culture. I know there's people out there that believe like what I'm trying to do with my videos, my role play help videos, is to like influence role play or change role play. Like I'm not. Just to be clear, I'm not. And so yeah, you know, that's when it comes to like Tumblr role play in particular and how things got there. It became obvious that it was not the place for us, and
yeah.
so we found another place that was safer for us.
I think there's also a lot of difficulty right now navigating it of as an ally, what is your responsibility to educate?
Oh yeah, that's a good
Uh,
question.
and sitting there and being like, and I think this kind of ties into this, is that there is only so much you can educate. There are people in the real world, just like in RP, that will not want to be educated.
Yeah,
And
unfortunately, which is hard
and
for me as
and
a lifelong learner to understand, but it's the
yeah,
truth.
it's, well, and that is just what's difficult, right? Is that you and I really enjoy the idea that we can continue to learn and grow and challenge our thinking and what we know and our knowledge.
Yeah.
But there are people who are completely content with what they have learned and
Yep.
don't need to learn anything else because it doesn't affect them.
Whereas for me, I'm like, I want to hear your crazy hot take because what if there's something valuable in there that I could learn?
Yeah. Or what if, I mean, and also too, I'd love to hear your crazy hot take because now I know how to argue. Now I can better prepare how to argue your crazy hot take
Yeah, like if
with
you
other
don't
people
agree with
who
it.
are interested in participating in discourse, so I can
Yeah.
use that and understand that logic.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult situation to navigate that I think kind of it all ties into one another. You're going to find people who disagree with you, and you're going to want to educate them because that's what we tend to want to do.
Yep. But it's
And
not always
sometimes
reasonable. It's not always
it's
reasonable.
not worth the effort.
Sometimes it's really not.
So, all right. But you mentioned this wonderful word that has kind of been what we've been going around as far as us as lifelong learners.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been talking about how we continue to do it as far as researching, but what are some other ways that we can continue to be lifelong learners? Is it just about like researching, or is there other areas that we can do this too?
So I think it's also about a state of mind and always being open to new information. And like I talked about, when you're trying to do some of the educating, you want to leave space for people to be wrong. I think that part of being a lifelong learner is allowing yourself space to be wrong. Because if you believe you're right all the time, then you got nothing else to learn, right? But knowing in your heart and knowing in your soul that that's not the case and that you are wrong too, really opens the floodgate to being in the correct mindset for being a lifelong learner. So if you can get your thought patterns into that, I think that it is super helpful, to make yourself interested in doing the actual work and research that you do to be a
Yeah.
lifelong learner. Yeah,
I think
Sasha says, I will be wrong until I die. That's the adventure. Yeah, I agree.
yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah, exactly that.
And I think because we talked about we have this idea that like there is a right and wrong answer, it becomes with this like this right is right and wrong is wrong, and it is black and white, and that is, and if you are wrong you are bad, when in reality you can be wrong and it be okay. I think that's something that people need to acknowledge, that like, oh, what I thought at 16 was wrong. In fact, Edward Cullen, terrible boyfriend. I was wrong, and I got to learn from that and grow
Bringing
from
it
it.
back. Bringing it back.
That's what I try to do, full circles in these podcasts.
Yeah, true, true, right? Like, when you look back and you can analyze something with new information, we don't come out the womb knowing these things. Like, that would be nice. That would be nice if I came out the womb, knowing everything that I ever needed to know and being woke as hell and all this stuff. But it's just not the case. It's just not the case. Nobody lives like that, and I don't think that you should be feeling. I don't think that it's super complicated, right? Like, if you realize you thought something harmful, then yeah, that sucks to learn that you are causing that harm. But I think it's okay. Take some comfort in knowing that that's literally everybody. We have all had
Yeah.
those moments our whole lives, and you're gonna get through it just like you got through it the last time it happened, just like everyone else has gotten through it. And the best you can do is do better in the future. Like, the
And
past is the past. It's there to learn from. But you can't. There's no one's invented time travel yet. Like, no one's invented time travel yet. That'll be cool one day, maybe when we do. But no one has, and so we just do our best to do better tomorrow.
yep. And know that you are doing good by educating yourself,
Yeah.
or
That
know that someone else is doing good by educating you.
Yeah, like the effort at the end of the day is really important, um because you're gonna make mistakes, and that's inevitable.
Yep. Well, I think this has been. We got a couple of minutes, so I was wondering if Sasha and Thumper had any hot takes in the chat. But I think overall that we kind of covered everything we needed to.
Okay. So, just kind of as an end cap, then, to relate it back to role play and touch on some of the points, that were role play specific, since we are role play and writing help primarily, is it's okay to be wrong. Don't stress about it. We all do it
Hell
sometimes. It's
yeah.
not a big deal. Who cares if you role played that thing wrong one time? You're right. Do it again later with somebody else or whatever, and do it right the next time. It's fine. Also, I think researching is important, and I think it's important in these uncertain times right now, where there's a lot of misinformation out there, that make sure that you're looking at multiple sources. Make sure that you're doing things like thinking, about the source that you're getting something from. stuff like that. And again, I can't recommend this book enough, The Art of Troubleshooting. If you are somebody that really struggles with that critical thinking and problem solving, that book is a godsend. And it's free. It's free because the author really believes that this is an important skill that's lacking in people, and he wants to help with it. So I cannot recommend that book enough for anybody that's struggling with that. And yeah, like just continuously researching and improving yourself is not only going to improve your role play and writing experience, but eventually it'll improve your life too.
Yeah, I also think it's important to, for my final note, when you are wrong, people will not remember your wrongness. They will remember your reaction to the wrongness. So if you
Absolutely.
are wrong, accept it, move on. Don't sit there. They will remember the reaction or the storm or or people insisting that they're not wrong. That's what people will remember. Just like if you messed up someone's name or anything like that, you sit there and you go, "Oh, I apologize." Okay, and then move on.
Exactly. Like if you call some, if you that, and that's a normal situation. We do that all the time, right? We use the wrong names for people. We use the wrong pronouns for people. And if you just say, "Oh shit, sorry," that fixes it like 99% of the time,
Yep.
And then you just do it
And
right the
don't
next time. Then you're good.
and and then don't dwell on it.
Yeah.
Don't like be like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Just like people are going to remember that. If you really want people to not remember you being wrong, just sit there and go, "My bad.
Yeah.
Bye."
Yeah. My bad. Move on. Do it right next time. And then nobody's
Yep.
going to even remember that you were wrong.
Thumper has a hot take that teachers should teach internet safety,
Oh, true.
and I agree. Actually, in fact,
True.
I think high schools are implementing this as part of their tech courses and
Oh.
online courses. So I think people are. I also know that English classes in at least college have been really, really like focused on. No, you need to have first of all reliable sources for these reasons exactly, but also to do your research when it comes to anything, including Facebook.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, that's good to hear. Hey Ryan, you're actually here for just the tail end, but I'm so glad that you could join us today, Ryan. For the last of it, VODs will be going up afterwards on YouTube. So for those of you that are logging in at the very tail end, I'm so sorry that you missed us, but you can catch up all of it on YouTube in a couple of hours when those VODs go up.
Yes. Also, Thumper, your aunt doesn't remember you calling her an old woman 20 years ago. I promise you. You are keeping yourself up at night for that one.
And you
We
want to
all
know
do
the
that,
truth? You
though.
want to know the truth?
What?
If she's holding a grudge like that 20 years later, it's got nothing to do with you. That has to
That's
do with
true.
her. That's her
Also,
problem,
also
not
20,
yours.
20 years ago, you were like 8. She was old. Like, that's the other thing, too.
She doesn't, and she wasn't even mad when it happened. That's the real response, right? Like that's the reality for those situations.
Yes.
My grandmother was
Um,
the one that was mad. Oh my gosh.
oh, well,
That's too
that's on
funny.
your grandmother. Apparently, old is an insult now. I don't know when that happened. I
Womp,
guess it was always kind of an insult,
I
but, like, I
guess.
don't get it. It just means that you're able to break rules more.
Yep.
That's what I've discovered about being old. Anyway, you want to hear about my wonderful little article for this week?
Yes, actually, can you link the article in the chat so I'll pull it up and we're
Yeah.
actually good at a good stopping point on the game, so I'll go ahead and save it and we'll switch over to the desktop and I'll pull up the article. So you can explain it while I'm getting
All
this
right.
going.
So, after COVID cancels all his flights, one man sailed solo across the Atlantic to reach his 90-year-old father for his birthday.
Oh my gosh,
And
what?
I am just thrilled by it. So, Juan Manuel Ballesterio, I suck at last names, uh, basically never got the memo that he couldn't go home or anything like that. COVID was canceling all his flights
This was at the very
from
beginning of
Portugal.
it?
Yes, so this was in when it was hitting the EU pretty hard. So he was in Portugal, and all the international flights shut down, and so he couldn't get to Argentina where his parents are, and so he ended up taking his boat. And he's a marine, so he had a lot of experience on a sailboat before and everything like that. But to sail across the entire Atlantic Ocean all the way down to Argentina to see his dad for his 90th
Oh
birthday.
my gosh. And look at that. Look at that good mask wearing right there. Mask,
Yes.
mask. Yeah, we love it. We love to see that. Oh, this is so nice. This is so nice. I mean, I hope of, in addition to the masks that they practice social distancing and all of that good stuff, because that is important, right? Those flights were canceled for a reason. But at the same time, like, it's really hard to not look at this and be like, oh my god, that's so sweet. Oh
Well,
my god,
well,
that's
like
so
here's the
sweet.
thing. He spent time on a boat where he was alone for more than 14 days, so he was
So he
totally
wasn't.
social distancing,
Yeah, so
which
he
means that
wasn't
he
then.
wasn't breaking any he wasn't breaking any rules. This is perfect.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I get
So
so the
it took
trip
him
itself ended
7
up quarantining him basically.
yeah, so it took him 75 days to get home
Oh my
from
gosh.
Portugal to Argentina.
That's crazy.
And it was a 29-foot sailboat, which is pretty decently sized. He had packed everything ready to go, and but he ran out of wine on day 38, which I think is extremely important because I would be like, whew, the last 10
Awful.
days would be terrible.
Awful. Oh, it says, and
um,
then the wind quit, leaving his sailboat sitting in the doldrums for 10 days. Oh no. So not only
yeah,
did he have no wine, but he got paused for 10 days. That's awful.
yeah. But overall, and he has a Instagram and everything like that. Overall, it was really
Yeah.
really good, and he was able and he took a test in Argentina and he cleared.
Oh, good.
You should have after 85 days on a
Mm,
sailboat.
right.
But yeah, so he played it by the rules and everything like that. But it's just nice to know that like that's still happening out in the world. Some good news for these COVID times.
I like this. You've shared a couple of the articles that you've shared. Some have been like funny stuff, right? But I really am enjoying the good news ones. So this is lovely.
Yeah,
And
I
I think
figured that
this is
that's
his
kind of what we
Instagram.
need.
This is his Instagram, right?
I
Let's go look
believe
at it.
so. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't want to sign in right now. Thank you. This is fine. Okay. Oh yeah, and he does some
But
scuba diving. Oh, these are beautiful. Let's
yeah.
see. Oh, no, we're not going to worry about signing in. Thank you. I just wanted to browse a little bit. This is so nice. Oh, and here's from the article. So must have been when he actually got there.
Yes.
Aww. We love him. Okay, what is his name again? Juan?
Juan.
Okay.
Yeah. Juan Manuel Ballester. Nope. See, Thumper even put it in the chat for me to figure out how to pronounce it.
Juan
And
Manuel Ballestero.
okay.
Ballestero. Yeah. Juan
Cool.
Manuel Ballestero. I
Terrible at
got
last
it.
names.
Thank
Not
you,
gonna lie.
Thumper. Oh, well, we stand. We love you, Juan. This is lovely.
Yeah, we stand Juan. So, but that's what I got for good news this week.
Okay, I like it. All right. So that was this was basically our episode on our experiences in the education system and kind of what we personally do as lifelong learners and kind of how we make that work. And we just felt like it was important when it comes to role play help to talk about some of that stuff because it is something that a lot of role players I think do struggle with, doing research for the characters and things that they're trying to set up, and also in the server a lot of times when people ask questions that they need help on in role play, what we end up doing is actually not even answering their question, but just helping them understand that it doesn't matter. Like the choice doesn't matter. It's okay. You can do whatever you want. We're just playing
Yeah.
pretend. You can do anything. So I felt this was an important topic for us to talk about. So thank you
Oh,
everybody
thank
for
you,
tuning
Lunar.
in. Thanks, Lunar.
It was lovely having you guys all in the chat. Thank you for interacting with us.
Yes.
We're glad that you appreciated it, and I hope you learned something today because I think that's the most important thing about being a lifelong learner and someone who's interested and invested in education is that you learn something new every day.
Yeah, I hope we were able to provide you guys with either a perspective that you hadn't heard before, or if it was a perspective that you had heard before, some additional ways that's talked about and discussed, and kind of why we have that perspective based on our not so great experiences with the
Oh,
education system, because that's where really it all came from, right? That's where really it all came from.
100%.
Is having imperfect experiences in early life.
And just know that when I rule the world one day, the education system will be one of the first things to change.
That will never happen. I will prevent you.
Why?
And only because I love you.
Why?
You can't rule the world, Landon.
I would be a
No.
wonder. I would
Mm-mm.
be a wonderful queen of the world. Thank you very much.
We're gonna
Vote in
we're
2020.
abolish all
Abolish homework.
abolish all unjust hierarchies, including ones with dictators that I like. Even
Well,
so, sorry, Landon. I can't.
guess
I
you're not
can't
getting
abide.
Australia. I get
But
that.
yeah, abolish homework for sure. No homework. Homework is pointless.
That's fine. That's fine. They can just replace me with Betsy DeVos. They can replace me
Oh my
I'll
god.
just take
Oh
her
my
job.
god.
That'll be
That
better.
I'd be okay with that part. I'd be okay with
Yeah.
that.
All
All right.
right.
Well, that's it. That's it. Bye, guys.
Be sure to follow the Twitch channel
Oh,
and
yes.
Karen's Instagram. Also, if you wanted to become a Patreon, she'd really appreciate it because she's
would.
wonderful and you should support her. You can follow our Instagram at Enter Stage Window, and you can listen to us on Spotify. Recommend us to your friends. Tune in next Saturday. Is there anything else?
No, if you're not following, please give me a follow on Twitch if you want to see your name pop up right now while we're on for like only about another minute or so. It makes a
Do
fun
it.
noise that I like to hear. So click that follow if you haven't yet. Bing.
Sasha,
Thank
Thumper,
you
I'm looking
so
at
much.
you.
No, that was Thumper. Thank you so much, Thumper, for that follow. Anybody else wants to follow? There we go. I see another one about to pop up. Give it just a few seconds. You're going to hear that ding one more time. There we go. Thank you so much,
Oh.
Sasha. Okay. That is our show. Thank you guys so much. We will see you next week with another fun topic and great hot takes.
Yeah, and don't forget to be awesome. Bye, guys.
Yes. Bye.